So if we can welcome to the stage a Chicago Storyteller staple who's wearing very shiny shoes tonight, Ozzie Totten. Just so you guys know, you can catch him tomorrow night at the Revolution Brewery, which is a freaking awesome place, to listen to some great stories that he curates for the second Storyteller show. Second story show, 6 p.m. Revolution Brewery. Everybody, Ozzie Totten.
So the show tomorrow night, just to plug that real quick, it's our second story annual fundraiser at Revolution Brewery, and it's unlimited beer and unlimited food and 2 really awesome stories. So you guys should totally come check it out. Awesome. So this summer, after my senior year of high school, I was finally hired as a camp counselor at Camp Buckwin, which was this Jewish day camp that I attended as a child, and I had been waiting to be a camp counselor for years. All my friends were, and I was super excited to be hired as the first ever junior counselor for the brand new Extreme Summer Adventure program, which was a program aimed at the junior high age children who had aged out of Camp Buckwin proper, but who were not yet old enough to join the counselor ranks of the camp. So it was me and my friend Megan and about 10 junior high age girls running around and taking camping trips throughout the country. It was amazing, right? We went on a 10-day camping trip to Yellowstone, which was beautiful, and we went sea kayaking through these giant limestone sea caves in Lake Superior, and it was gorgeous. But the story I want to tell you guys was a hiking trip that happened around this small little town called Grand Marais, Minnesota, which is this tiny little old antique town on the very tip of the state on top of Lake Superior. It's absolutely beautiful, and there's nothing to do. And so, except hike. And so Megan and I, on this Monday morning, we got the passenger van and we loaded in all 10 girls, and we drove 6 hours up to Grand Marais, Minnesota, and we found our campsite. And we did not know when we signed up for this campsite that there would be no running water at the campsite. There would just be one of those hand pumps at the driveway, I guess you call it, at the entryway, and we would have to fill up these giant jugs of water that the campsite provided for us for all of our drinking water and our hand washing water. And so we did that, and we brought the girls to the campground itself, and we handed out the tent assignments, and the girls went to work putting together their tents. And Riva and Madeline, they were going to be tent partners, and they were 2 polar opposite people. Riva, had really dark hair, and Madeline had really vibrant red hair. And Riva was super, super small and petite, and Madeline was super tall and a little bit round. And Riva, she was the sweetest girl who was the nicest, and everybody enjoyed her. And Madeline was loud and boisterous and obnoxious, and nobody really liked her, right? Except Riva, because Riva was really nice. And so Madeline and Riva were in their tent together. And they were setting up their tent, but it wasn't going well because they weren't communicating well, if we're being honest about it. And Riva ended up hitting Madeline in the face with a tent pole, not on purpose, accidentally. And Madeline started crying, and then Riva started crying because she's a sweetheart, and Madeline's crying, and it's her fault. And Megan, my co-counselor, and I had to put their tent together for them, which wasn't a big deal, right? But didn't really set a good tone for the rest of the trip. And so we had all the tents put together, and before our dinner that night, that first evening, we're going to take a late afternoon hike, just to get the girls used to the idea of what hiking was, and how you go hiking. And it's beautiful up there. That is why you go to Grand Marais. There are these gorgeous, miles-long hiking trails around the north of Lake Superior with these boulders that you can climb on top of and see atop rows and rows of pine trees onto this beautiful, giant lake. It's stunning, right? And that was all lost on the girls, of course. Madeline, she tripped because she was wearing flip-flops from Old Navy, and she hit her head. And for the second time in a day, she started crying and was very loud and obnoxious about it. And the other girls were getting really distraught because they were attracting bugs with their lip gloss from Claire's. And they didn't like bugs because they're junior high girls, right? And so that night around the campfire, the girls unanimously decided that we were not going hiking anymore. And Megan and I were like, oh, okay, girls, what do you want to do then? And they were like, we'll just go to town. And Megan and I were like, but there's like nothing to do in Grand Marais. It's like antique shops and like one little restaurant, and that's it. And they were like, that's okay. And so the next day, we went to Grand Marais. And Megan and I figured we'll spend one day here, the girls will get super bored, and then we'll just go back hiking and do what we actually came up here to do, right? So we spent the morning on this pebble beach that had these beautiful gray pebbles that were like the size of your hand and super smooth and worn, and they're not really comfortable to lay on or tan on. So we threw them into the lake for a bit, and then that got boring. And then we went to the antique stores, and that got boring. And so the girls were hungry, so we went to the one little restaurant by the lake. That was it was built like a surf shack, if you will, with wood paneling on the side, and they had these really greasy burgers and these really soggy French fries, and their specialty was this homemade chocolate custard. And we go and order our food, and Madeline, she goes, I would like the biggest custard that you have. And the woman behind the counter, she's like, that's 72 ounces, is that okay? And Madeline's like, sure. Okay. And I, instead of being like, Madeline, you might want to think about getting a smaller size. Or Madeline, you know, we have a cooler in the car, so you can totally just eat some of it and save the rest of it for later. I was like, Madeline, you're gonna have to finish that before we go back to the beach. It was my first year counseling, right? So we went back to the beach, and Madeline, she saunters off away from the other kids, which was super out of character for her. She like walked away and sat down on the beach and was playing with this rock and throwing it and picking up pebbles and throwing them. And I walked over to her and I was like, Madeline, are you doing okay? And she didn't really look at me. She just kind of held this pebble in her hand and played with it. And so I sat down next to her and I was like, Madeline, what's up? What's going on? And I put my arm around her and I was like, talk to me, what's up? She was like, okay, Oz. So I wasn't really feeling good, and I felt like if I was gonna move, I was gonna throw up. And I was like, okay, are you feeling like that now? And she was like, well, so then I had to go to the bathroom. But I felt like I couldn't move, because if I was gonna move, then I was gonna throw up. And I looked down at her, and in between her bright pink Hello Kitty beach shorts and her milky white thigh was some chocolate custard. Some digested chocolate custard all over this beautiful, gorgeous Pebble Beach in Grand Marais, Minnesota, right? And so I was like, Megan, I need your help right now. And I took the rest of the girls to the van. I was like, girls, let's go to the van, we're going to the van, no questions. Nobody asks any questions. Well, Megan takes Madeline and she dunks her off in the lake, and then they go to clean up at the bathroom at the restaurant, and the girls were all around the van. The girls are like, is everything okay? And I'm like, no questions. And they're like, is everything okay? I'm like, no questions. Is Madeline gonna be, she's gonna be fine, no questions. And then, to their credit, the girls were really good about it. Like 20 minutes later, when Madeline and Megan came back, Madeline climbed into the van, and Reva put her hand on her shoulder and was like, you feeling okay? And Madeline nodded quietly, and we drove back to the campsite, right? And it was okay. We had a couple more hours at the campsite than we planned, so we called it free expression time, where you could write in your journal, or you could read a book, or you could, you know, it's camp. And usually people couldn't take a nap during this time, but we let Madeline go and take a nap in her tent, right? And so a couple hours later, Madeline comes out of her tent and she grabs Reva, and Megan and I at this point, we're starting to cut vegetables for dinner. And so we're sitting in this circle of picnic tables, and Madeline and Reva sit at another picnic table, and Madeline goes, Reva, I want you to know what happened to me. And she tells her tent mate that she just shit herself on this beach, right? And then she goes, and Reva, I want you to tell the other girls my story. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, okay, great. Sounds good. Like I'm kind of mad because I just spent all this energy and political capital getting girls not to ask any questions. And then Madeline goes and does this, and so I was like, all right. And so Madeline, she gets up and she walks down the pathway to the porta potties, because remember, there's no running water at this campsite, right? It's just a giant hole in the ground that's like a couple steps raised on this cement block. And the porta potties are a ways down, right? But like 3 minutes after she goes down the path, we hear her calling, Megan! Megan! And Megan looks at me, she's like, really? And it turns out that taking that first step, walking up to the porta potty, Madeline shit herself again. And there's no running water here, right? There's no lake to dunk her off in, so poor, God bless her heart, Megan has to clean her up with hand sanitizer and toilet paper, right? During dinner time. And so me and the rest of the girls, we're making these delicious skillet pizzas, cheese pizzas, because it's a kosher camp, remember, so there's no pepperoni, so it's just cheese and vegetables. We're cooking them in these skillets, and Madeline comes waddling back with Megan, and Megan's like shaking her head, and Madeline, she's got a little smile on her face, and she sits down next to me at the picnic bench. She's like, I'm feeling much better. Can I have a pizza? And I'm like, no, you can't have a pizza. You can have bread and water. like, what are you thinking? Of course you can't have pizza, right? And so I'm cooking my pizza over the fire, and Reva, she's sitting on one side of me, and Madeline's sitting on the other side of me, and the food is right behind me on the picnic table. And Reva goes, Madeline, what are you doing? And I turn to her, and Madeline has a handful of mozzarella cheese, and she's just eating it, just shoving it in her face, right? And this is where I lose it. Like, this is the moment that got me not hired the next summer. I just turned to Madeline and I go, what the hell thought process did you go through to make this seem like a good idea? And then she throws up. She just leans over to the side of the picnic table and barfs up the little mozzarella cheese that she has in her stomach. And I just look at Megan across the fire, and I'm like, we're going home. We're not staying here. And so the next morning, the girls pack up their tents, and we call all the parents on the ride back home. And like this is day 2. We're supposed to be there for 5 days, right? Like, parents have plans. There are things that family vacations were thrown all out of whack for this, but we were going home because this was not working well, and Megan and I had enough of it, right? And so we get back to the Jewish Community Center, and all the kids' parents come pick them up, except for Madeline's dad, who shows up. They always come late, but Madeline's dad, when it comes to pick them up, he's this mountain of a man with bright red hair, just like his daughter, and I pull him aside, and I'm like, Mr. Madeline, your daughter, she had some health issues on the trip. She had a really large custard, and then she soiled herself twice, and then she threw up. And we're a little concerned about her, and Mr. Madeline starts laughing. Hysterically, like big guffaw laughs from his belly, right? And I look at Madeline just behind him sitting down, and her face is turned beet red. And she is so embarrassed. And I felt really bad about this moment because, like, it's not my fault that she shit herself twice, but like I kind of made it happen by like telling her she had to eat it, right? Like this is kind of my fault, and I feel really bad. And she doesn't really have any friends at camp outside of Reva, and I'm not really that nice to her. And now her dad's laughing at her, and into this moment of weakness when she needs somebody to like be there for her, he's like, nah. And so we take the rest of the week off, and on Monday we come back to camp, and Madeline comes late, and we're not going on a camping trip this week, so we're just taking day trips around the Twin Cities, and we go to the Mall of America the first day. And we're going to get lunch at the Mall of America after we've gotten mini skirts or whatever. And Madeline's like, Ozzie, do you want to get ice cream with me? And at first I was like, oh, fuck no, of course no, I don't want to get ice cream with you. But I told her, yeah, as long as you get it small this time. That's my story.